Welcome back to this week's episode of Live Longer, Live Stronger. We are super excited to have two very, very special guests with us. Today's episode is called Lessons from a Life Lived Past 100. And part of the magic of this podcast is we're combining the guests that we're having who are experts in different areas, different facets in longevity and wellness, the exercise, the diet and nutrition, the mental health issues, and really all of the aspects that go into living a full and complete and meaningful and purposeful life with more health span as we age. So this episode is particularly exciting for me because what we're going to do is examine the life of a centenarian that we know and love. Let's start by introducing our special guests. Joining us remotely is the youngest child, is Dancel White Nelson and Russell Nelson. Russ Nelson. And in studio with us is my gorgeous wife, Marjorie Nelson Lowder. And she is the youngest of the 9 daughters. And so grateful these two have joined us to explore the mindset, the habits, and the strength from a very unique centenarian life, and that is your father, Russell M. Nelson, who lived to be 101. That's phenomenal. From the Blue Zones, we know what they call the Power 8, and these are lifestyle habits of the world's healthiest, longest-lived people. And this will be 2 episodes. In this episode, we're going to look at habits 1 through 4. And I'll tell you what they are. And then we're going to dive right in, and we look forward to your stories, your anecdotes, your observations of your father. The 4 habits that we're going to look at in this episode are: number 1, move naturally. Number 2, purpose. Number 3, downshift, which is how we relax, how we decompress, how we take some of the stress out of our lives. And then the 80% rule. And we'll talk about that in more detail in a minute. But let's start with move naturally. So you probably got the question all the time, oh my goodness, your dad is so fit and so active in these areas. I'm 99, 100 years old. Does he go to the gym every morning? So Russ, did your dad work out at the gym every day in his life?
I can't say that I ever really saw him go to the gym or say, I'm going to start a workout, or, yeah, that was a really good workout. He was, I think he was natural movement personified, whether it was, well, I've got a lot of different kind of examples of natural movement, from, simple things like just getting up after the meal's done to clear the table and do the dishes, to a broader example of after a long trip on an airplane, rather than go back to the hotel, put your feet up, or take a nap or whatever, he preferred to just get up and walk around the block and go see what was around. And so he was always moving.
Yeah. What are some of the observations you had of your dad? Those ways that he moved naturally. It was just part of his lifestyle, just part of his daily habits.
Yes, I think more times than not, she chose to take the stairs whenever possible instead of the elevator. And for him, he did go to the gym, but yard work was his workout. He always kept our yard, mowed the lawn, trimmed the hedges, pruned the flowers.
You want to know something interesting?
Break the leaves.
In the Blue Zones, this great research that Don Buechner did, that was a real common theme with these pockets, these geographic pockets around the world, where there is this outlier number of centenarians. In almost every case, that was one of the commonalities. They gardened. They didn't go to the gym. They didn't work out. But they did things that brought them joy and caused them to move, to lift, to bend. So it's the movement, it's the flexibility because you're crouching down, you're bending, you're able to stand up from the seated position, which a lot of older people can't do anymore. What else did he do? What did he like to do in the wintertime when he was gardening?
He loved to snow ski. That is a source of joy and exercise. He taught 10 kids how to ski. And then that came back to, he says, came back to bless him in his older years when we could ski with him not having to hold us up in front of him.
What other kinds of things did he like to do for movement that brought him joy and that just seemed natural? Russ, what else did you see him do?
While we're talking about winter, something else we saw him do a lot was snow removal, shoveling or snow blowing our driveway. We lived in the cul-de-sac, and even later in life, he lived in the cul-de-sac, and he wouldn't stop with our driveway and sidewalk. He would go all the way around and do all of the neighbors. And I happened to, later in his life, he lived in the same neighborhood as a coworker of mine. And this coworker was telling me a funny story about how a couple of neighbors were getting together, like, okay, next snowstorm, we're going to get up and we're going to beat President Nelson to shoveling the snow. And they got up at 6 or 6:30 in the morning or something like that. And it was already all done. So there's probably another subtitle there of early to bed and early to rise was another watch of his. But
yes.
But as far as winter goes, no snowflake was safe from him if it landed on a sidewalk or a driveway.
Snow shoveling.
One thing I love about that story, Russ, and that is so amazing. And not only is it the move naturally idea and doing something that's just part of your routine and your habit, but there's a second layer of serving. And there's a ton of research. I've read 2 really powerful books, one called The Healing Power of Doing Good, and the other is called The Wonder Drug. And they're both around the concept of how volunteering, how serving others actually extends our lifespan. It decreases inflammation, decreases pain for people who are experiencing arthritis and such, that it has physiological and emotional benefits and can extend life. So that's such a beautiful example of a habit that had multiple benefits in terms of longevity. And I'm sure he wasn't doing it with that in mind. He was doing it because he loved his neighbors and wanted to serve them, which is one of the takeaways from these books is it only works when you do it for the right reason, which is what he did.
Really how he was wired was thinking of others and serving.
Having that why, having the reason behind the movement, the reason behind shoveling snow, having a purpose, that leads us into this second point of these blue zones. What is this? What is the purpose? A second one.
So one of these blue zones is Okinawa, and they call this ikigai. This ikigai is why I wake up in the morning. So there's a lot of research out there that has actually shown that being clear and knowing your purpose in life can extend your life expectancy up to 7 years. Isn't that incredible? We think of longevity as, oh, you got to eat the right food. It's all about nutrition and exercise. These are important, but purpose, this ikigai, is so important. So, Russ, talk about, this will be easy, but talk about, what do you think your dad's ikigai was? What was his reason why he woke up in the morning and jumped out of bed, hit the ground running?
Yeah, how do you sum up? I would say his number one driving motivation was to get up and serve others and do good. I remember when I was young, we were talking about careers and, where I might go after school and what career path I might pursue and things like that. And he kind of just summarized it and said, it doesn't matter a whole lot so long as you go out and you serve others and you help other people in their lives, whether that be, well, whatever that profession may be. And so I think that was really kind of the central and driving force of just about everything he did, whether it was the family, the neighbors, the world, whoever. And he was able to really embrace that drive and desire to serve others and to do good in the world.
That's a beautiful answer. Marjorie, how would you answer that same question? What, from your perspective, how would you sum up your dad's that purpose for living?
Well, I think that he was very purpose-driven as a general rule through his life. It's why he wanted to become a doctor, to help other people. Always, if there were things that he needed to do to get up to help my mom or to help us, he got right up and right at it, and was called to church service and as full-time in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles and later as prophet and president. He kept that forefront in his mind, and he was energized by the work. He was energized by people, by serving people, by all the people of the world, not just members of our faith. He had that deep sense of purpose in his callings and to serving people in whatever capacity he placed in.
Talk a little bit about his career. He was world-class cardiothoracic surgeon, was part of the team that invented the heart and lung machine that made open heart surgery possible. I mean, this was a man of science. He had a PhD in addition to an MD, was a real respected scientist in addition to physician and cardiothoracic surgeon. Developed new techniques in heart surgery that are still in use today. Just really a legendary career as a physician and scientist. And Russ, it occurs to me when you talk about just wanting to serve people. I've heard him, and I'm paraphrasing, but say things like, well, the reason we do these things is to make people's lives better, in reference to his service in the religious setting as a faith leader. Heard him say on so many occasions, and that was a light bulb moment for me that, oh, yeah. And it felt like to me that was kind of what drove him professionally, spiritually, personally, things that maybe he said or did with you or that you observed with others where you felt like that was what he was trying to do, was lift them and inspire them and make their life a little better.
There were a few times where we would meet somebody and this person we were meeting would say, oh, you operated on my father or my grandmother or dad. And our dad would say, oh, what was her name? And they would tell her name and he'd say, oh yeah, I remember her. And I did this procedure on her. And he knew.
He remembered every procedure.
He remembered the procedure and how things turned out. And anyway, so his memory not only went forward, but it also went back pretty well. Just upon those kind of situations of recall. So I also have a couple of memories of along the lines of service as well, visiting people. Whether there were widows or widowers in the neighborhood, around holiday times, especially, we'd go visit a handful of people and really nurtured some special relationships there. And even I remember going with him to visit his sisters a couple of times, or several times. But there were a couple of times where he said, sometimes sisters just need to be visited by their brother. And so not with any real agenda or anything like that, but just to check in and make sure everything's okay. Sometimes he was soliciting some of his medical advice and things like that. But there were oftentimes we would go visit people to make sure they're okay and that they were doing well, and see how we could help them, even if it was just with a simple visit.
What a gift for connecting with people, really one-to-one. Yeah. That's so special. Thank you for sharing that. All right. The third principle, power principle of the blue zones, is called downshift. Everybody experiences stress. Even people in blue zones experience stress. But it's what you do about it that matters. Now, the problem with stress is it leads to chronic inflammation, which is the catalyst for most diseases and maladies. The longest lived people in the world have strategies and routines that allow them to calm down, to de-stress, to decompress. And that can be, for people in Okinawa, it's taking time to remember their ancestors, which I think is very sweet because I used to work at Family Search and I love family history. And others have a time where they have a happy hour where they come together, and it's not about the drinking, it's about coming together and socializing and having that sense of community and friendship and just being with people you love and hanging out. What were some things, some just daily habits and patterns you saw in your dad? This a very, very busy individual, both in his professional career as a heart surgeon, and then later in life, his role in leadership in a worldwide faith organization. What things did you see him do to allow him to decompress or downshift? Russ, what were some things you saw?
A good question. It's an interesting thing to look at it through the lens of today's, relax. He never went and kicked his feet up on the beach or in a lazy boy or anything like that. It's funny too, because it almost was like his movement, the being in the garden or doing yard work was his way of decompressing and was his way of either working through or finishing thoughts that he brought home from the office or things that were weighing heavy on him. Until it was clear or behind him, because there was no man cave, there was no time to decompress, so to speak. Give me an hour and then I'll come out and then we could do family stuff. Because when he came home, he was ready to go and be engaged with us as kids and things like that. And so it's an interesting thing to look at from today's perspective of what does a downshift or a relaxation method look like, because his was a little different. And I think he found peace and relaxation in doing something else, but still kind of moving and being engaged.
All right. The number 4 is the 80% rule. Now, here's what it is. It's in Japanese, it's hara hachi bu. And the Okinawans repeat that little mantra. It's a 2,500-year-old mantra from Confucius that reminds them to stop eating when their stomachs are 80% full. And the science behind that is that last 20% can be the very difference between losing weight or maintaining weight or gaining weight.
The only problem I see with this is that the Okinawans never had like a really good home-cooked turkey dinner, like a Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
Or a Christmas roast.
Yeah. Hari Hachibu was out the window.
Yeah. When pumpkin pie is involved, I'd say to the Hana Hachibu.
Yeah. Hari Hachibu.
But most of the time I'd say it's good.
But talk about your dad as it relates to Hara Hachibu.
Yeah, there were a lot of questions of what does he eat and what does he do and things like that. And there was even a pretty strong rumor the last, I don't know, 10 years of his life that he was vegetarian, and that wasn't the case. I think just, a couple of things that I observed the most is, first, and maybe it's two sides of the same coin here, but he was well-rounded. He didn't want to. He also was a child that was raised during the Depression, and so things like rolls and bread and stuff like that seemed extra to him. But he, made sure that he had a good mix of nutrients on his plate. But he also did not. He didn't eat to excess either. Yeah. In that he knew when he was done. I remember one time, just a few years ago, we were on a fishing trip, and the hosts were so generous, and they would feed us so well for every meal of the day. And we came in after fishing one day, and he's like, "I do not need another big dinner. I know what my body needs, and what I need now is to just go to bed. I'm not hungry, and I'm just gonna get dinner." And everybody was like, "Is he okay? He's not eating dinner." And it's like, I trust him. He just said he doesn't need it, and he woke up the next day and went right back to the schedule, and was pretty in tune with what his body needed and things like that. And just, it was not to an excess or to an obsessive point, but I think he just knew what he needed, and he didn't overdo it either. But that also didn't mean that, we never had ice cream, because we had ice cream or birthday cake or whatever, plenty, but it was just all taken in moderation in all things that really helped. And that's why I say it was kind of two sides of the same coin. If it's moderation, it's, making sure that everything's well-rounded and that just done evenly.
Yeah. And that's what the longevity experts are finding, is that the people who are able to maintain that lifestyle aren't chasing a fad. It's not the latest fad diet. It's not any extreme thing. It's just exactly what you described, Russ. It's what I call portion control. And that's what I noticed in the 14 years or so that I was able to marry Dad.
I was thinking of a funny story when we were growing up, and we would go on road trips. Most of our family vacations were road trips. And they were, many of us, at varying ages and stages of what we would eat and what we would like to order. And so he would always just order a cup of soup for himself. And so he'd go down, he'd let us all order, and he'd either order nothing or a cup of soup. And because he knew he was going to be clean up batter, right? That's stuff that we weren't going to eat.
It's the dad tax.
Yeah.
It's the dad tax.
Especially in road trips. It's the hand back.
But it was always assessed at the end instead of at the beginning.
Yes. I don't know how real this is, but the science of eating slowly, not just portion-wise, but eating slowly, because your stomach takes a while to recognize that it's full and doesn't communicate that with your brain until it's past full, basically. So as the slower that you eat, the easier it is to eat 80% of your plate, basically, and to not finish every single bite of the cake or the mashed potatoes or whatever it is. And so I think that's part of it, is eating slower and paying attention. And when your body says, that's good, like being okay with leaving some on your plate. Because like I said, I know a lot of people grow up where it's like, you have to eat everything on your plate. And the truth is that it's kind of damaging, and it kind of creates a weird relationship with your food, with what you eat. And so being okay with leaving a little bit on your plate.
But to Keros's point, my mother-in-law is famous for saying the garbage can won't gain any weight by eating that.
I love that.
Don't feel like you got to force it.
I love that.
Well, we've been so honored to have these two special guests on our podcast today. The beautiful Marjorie Nelson Lowder, my sweetheart. We literally yesterday celebrated our 13th anniversary. So blessed to be your mate and sweetheart. And her baby brother, Russ Nelson, baby in quotes, because he's about 6'14". And when we come back, we're going to, in our next episode, talk about the other 4 principles from the Blue Zones that I think your father personified so beautifully. So until next time, we look forward to taking this journey with you. We hope you'll walk with us on this path so you too can live longer and live stronger. I'm Brad Lowder.
Keros Lowder. Thanks to our guests. Thanks you guys for being here.
Such a joy to be with you too. Thank you so much.